During World War II, Germany created a weapon that was the largest cannon ever used on the battlefield in the history of the world. Yes, so huge that it took 5 separate trains to transport it from one place to another. It didn't end there. It required more than 4,000 people to operate it. You can imagine that just firing a single shot required a huge amount of preparation. And months of time. And when it roared, the entire area would shake to the ground, as if an earthquake had occurred throughout the entire area. And this terrible weapon was called the Serre Gustav. This cannon was created by the huge German company Krupp. They had one goal: to create a weapon that could destroy the enemy's strongest concrete bunkers, fortresses, and even underground fortifications from a distance. At that time, the French Maginot Line and the Soviet defenses were so strong that it was almost impossible to break them with ordinary cannons. And this gigantic cannon was created to make that impossible task possible. Now imagine a cannon standing in front of you that is about 47 meters long. That is, about as long as 8 tanks lined up one after the other. Its barrel alone was 32 meters long. And its mouth was so big that a person could easily walk through it. It was not only big. Its size was the same as an entire building. If a person stood next to it, he would feel very small. Like an ant standing next to a huge monster. This cannon weighed about 1350 tons. So heavy that it was not possible to place it on ordinary ground. For this, 4 parallel railway lines had to be specially built. The cannon sat on 2 lines and the huge cranes that were used to place its parts moved on the other 2 lines. The whole setup was a kind of engineering matter, which is not only for war but also a vivid example of how far the limits of technology can go. Taking this cannon from one place to another was another huge operation. It used to be broken down into about 25 large pieces. Then those parts were taken by separate trains. Then they were reassembled at a new location. And this whole process took about 6 weeks. Think about it, it takes a month and a half before a weapon can be fired. How important this time is in a war. Thousands of people worked during this whole process. Some were setting up trucks. Some were assembling parts, some were making bullets. The whole place looked like a small city. Such a big arrangement just to fire a cannon. This proves how unusual it was. It was not just a weapon. Rather, it was a whole system. Now let's come to the most terrifying part. Its bullets. This cannon had a high explosive shell about 8 meters long. And it weighed about 4,800 kilograms. When this shell was fired into the air, it would hit about 40 kilometers away. And when it hit the ground, it would create a hole about 12 meters deep. That means today a building could disappear in that hole. This cannon had such power. There was another type of shell called armor-piercing. And it was even heavier. About 7,100 kilograms. This shell was made in such a way that it penetrated deep into the ground and then exploded. That is, it did not break anything outside, but rather penetrated and destroyed the entire structure. Tests showed that it could penetrate about 10 meters of concrete. That means even the strongest bunker in the world was not safe in front of it. The bullet of this cannon could go so far that it was possible to hit a target about 40 to 45 kilometers away. That means it could be hit from one city to another. For that time, it was an incredible technology. But behind this power was a huge limitation, which later changed the future of this weapon. Because firing a bullet was not so easy. Each shot was a separate operation. First the barrel had to be lowered. Then the huge shell had to be loaded. Then the propellant had to be installed. The whole process was quite slow and complicated and had to be done very carefully. As a result, it took a lot of time. And it became difficult to keep up with the fast pace of the war. And when this cannon fired, its sound was so loud that it could be heard from a long distance. All the surrounding buildings would collapse. The ground would shake. Many times people could not understand whether it was an explosion or an earthquake. It was a sound that could not only be heard but also felt. And this terrible cannon was used during the siege of Sevastopol. This monster was used to break the strong defense system of the Soviets there. One cell hit the underground ammunition depot. After the explosion, the whole place collapsed. Everything around was destroyed. At that moment, this cannon showed its true power. But here comes the question. Why couldn't the Germans win that war despite being so powerful? Because the reality is that this cannon had more limitations than it was powerful. It worked very slowly. After firing a shot, it took a long time to get ready for the second time. Sometimes up to 45 minutes. This is a very long time in the war. Also, after each shot, the railway line would settle. The power of the explosion was so great that even the underground structure would move. As a result, everything had to be fixed again. Time was wasted. The entire system would stop. There was another big problem. It was almost impossible to hide such a large weapon. Because the enemy could easily understand its location.